economy? Are you trying to create more prosperous community there? Or just are we trying to find Osama bin Laden? So when will this mission end? What is the ultimate goal of NATO and United States? Thank you.
Okay, very hard question. And pass it just across the road to this gentleman here.
Bogdan Aurescu, State Secretary for Strategic Affairs, MFA of Romania. I very much agree that Afghanistan is a test for NATO. So the question is Russia really interested in solving the Afghan solution and Afghan problem? And second, is there a place in this strategy for Afghanistan for buying the hearts and minds of the Taliban, for winning the hearts and minds of the Afghan people? And does it contradict the requirement for the Karzai government to combat corruption?
We'll start with you, Najim.
You know, Liz, I think a very important issue has been raised. What is the objective in Afghanistan? If you recall, after 9/11, the Pakistanis were asked by the Americans to go and talk to Mullah Omar and tell him to get rid of Osama bin Laden. That America didn't have a fight on its hands with the Taliban. It had no quarrels with the Taliban. And Mullah Omar refused. Now that's where it began. We have to end up in a situation where the Taliban and Mullah Omar and Osama bin Laden are separated. The Taliban have to be accommodated at some level or the other because they never posed a threat to Pakistan at that time, far less to the United States. It's Osama bin Laden and the other Muslims from the other 17 or 18 countries who landed up there and created a problem. So the idea is that Afghanistan should not be a base area for the export of terror. The Taliban are not competent to do that, and therefore the Taliban have to be accommodated, and the Al-Qaeda has to be crushed. Pakistan has to be part of that equation. There's no question of nation building or staying on, and all these are non-issues, frankly. And they've always been non-issues. We ought to go back and leave Afghanistan to the Afghanistan people, as long as the Afghanistan people and their representatives, whether they're the Taliban or anybody else, are not involved in the export of terror or in creating base areas for world terrorists. That's where that should be the end game. So number one. Number two, in terms of what Mr. Karzai should do in the next 12 months or so, I think, since I've been arguing that you need to bring Pakistan on the table, I think Mr. Karzai needs to establish a degree of trust with Pakistan. Pakistan has a major problem with Mr. Karzai's regime. We have 100,000 Pakistani troops in Balochistan province. There is an insurgency going on there right now. Punjabis are being targeted. It's a very serious problem. And the Baloch insurgents are based in Afghanistan. And the first thing Mr. Karzai can do is to create that bridge of trust with the Pakistanis by getting rid of the Baloch insurgents and helping Pakistan establish, shall we say, a political homecoming for them and a reprieve and a homecoming. I mean, that's the sort of thing you need to build trust between Karzai and Pakistan, which is going to be very important in the next 12 months or so.
I'm afraid the clock is ticking, and I'm getting very stern looks in the German Marshall Fund. Senator McCain, would you like to respond to your fellow senators' comments about concern about the strategy?
Yeah, very quickly. It's interesting how we are now revisiting the Vietnam War in light of Afghanistan and others, and it's also interesting there are very different views of history. My view of history was the assassination of Ziem and his brother. It's one of the shameful sagas in American history. Henry Cabot Lodge and the CIA orchestrated his overthrow. President Kennedy unwittingly agreed to it when it was surprised. With our orchestration, we took the head of a government and his brother. They were overthrown and assassinated. That's not what the United States of America should be all about. So when you keep talking about replacements for Karzai, I used to hear about replacements for Maliki. So let's be careful. You might end up with unintended consequences, and so I think that's important. I'm sorry you're confused, sir. I think I can tell you, just read what we did in Iraq and adopt that to Afghanistan with significant changes in accord with the very different situations. I don't think the Russians are going to be helpful. In fact, I think the Russians are taking a certain amount of pleasure over our difficulties there in Afghanistan. And so anyway, why are we there? Because we don't want Afghanistan to return to be a base for attacks on the United States of America and our allies. And we will see, in my view, if we do it right, a 2 steps forward and 1 step back progress towards peace and security for not only Afghan people, but for the United States and our allies.
Michael, can you pause with one line, role of money?
Pardon me?
No, sorry, to Michael Semple, but just a one-line answer to, can money play a role? Can they be bought?
No, no. The resources, resources are important, but the people who are fighting there, they believe that they're doing it for a cause, and they've got a political and ideological explanation for it. What you've got to do, you've got to make them feel good about being part of the political process in Afghanistan. Don't think that you can turn them into mercenaries. Make them feel good about being on the right side.
Okay. Craig, I've got Roger Cohen is the last person on my list, so I have to ask for executive privilege whether or not Roger's allowed to ask.
Only for Roger.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Roger Cohen, New York Times. Question for Senator McCain and Michael Semple. Given what you've both said about the importance of tenacity and endurance, how damaging would it be if President Obama combines a commitment of more troops with a specific timetable or exit strategy? Would that undo whatever gain there is to be had from sending more troops? And quickly to Najam, in terms of a Pashtun buy-in, what's the one step you would take or choose to get it?
Okay, it's very brief. Senator McCain?
Let me just say that I think benchmarks are important. They're even more important, perhaps, in Afghanistan than they were in Iraq, given the lack of credibility that the Karzai government has. I'm all for benchmarks. But if we set a date that we're going to withdraw, I don't want to go. I don't want to go if we're going to set a date so that the Taliban and others could just sit back and wait until we left.
Gotcha.
You know, the Pashtuns are a majority in Afghanistan, so you have to have a Pashtun government. And Mr. Karzai does not represent the Pashtuns. Point number one. Number two, Pakistan has a huge Pashtun population. We have a problem over the Durand Line with Afghanistan. Afghanistan refuses to accept it as the international border. We want our Pashtuns to look towards Islamabad. We want the Afghan Pashtuns to look towards Kabul. That can only happen if the Pashtuns rule are predominant players in Afghanistan, number one, and number two, if the Durand Line is accepted as an international border, so that Pakistan's fears about its areas being taken over by the Pashtuns of Afghanistan are allayed. So that's the sort of solution you need, which is why you need to firm up the Durand Line, you need a strong Pashtun presence in Afghanistan, and you need the Pashtuns of Pakistan to look towards Islamabad.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking all of you for all of your patience. There was many good questions. I hope I did catch the hands of all of you. I wish we could have taken more, but don't forget we're here in lovely city of Halifax for at least 2 more days. There's lots of time to discuss. I want to thank our panelists, Michael Semple, Senator McCain, General Hillier, Najim Sethi. I have to say, when it comes to Afghanistan, you hear a lot of must, should, must do, can do. But let's hope that Obama is right, that in 1 year we'll say, yes, we can. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us.
And a big thank you to you.